Growing up, this is the time of year that we would start to think about spring cleaning. Sometimes up in upstate New York, we'd actually get snow in May. Not often, but so we probably about the first or second week of May, Mom would say, okay, let's do some spring cleaning. And, just to get rid of the clothes that we're not going to be able to use anymore. I used to get jealous that my brothers and I had hand-me-downs. My sister never get any. She didn't get anything like that because she only one girl, so she got all new clothes all the time. Got kind of a little jealous on that. But it's a reality. We have to do that once in a while to freshen up the house, etc., etc. Well, our faith is something like that. We can get in a rut, and you remember. I think, hopefully, you remember what's the difference between a rut and a grave. What's the difference? Depth. Depth. That's about the only difference. And we hear in the gospel today that we are brought into the very life of Christ. He is the branch. He's the vine. We are the branches. And the Father is the vine grower. It's a great organic way of looking at the church. It's not simply about rules and regulations. That's not it. Those are there, of course. But it's organic. It's growing. And we have to be in a constant lifetime bringing ourselves closer to the love of God. And it's not easy. We get in habits, or we say silly things like, "Well, this is the way God made me." No, we make ourselves. God is leading us in so many different ways. And St. John talks about today in the second reading to live in depth, deeds, and truth. It's not simply just saying things, but to do the right things and to do the things that God wants, deeds, and in truth. We have this kind of thing, it's my truth. Well, not really. Truth belongs to God. And sometimes you say, well, I like chocolate ice cream, or I don't like. I mean, that's really way down there. It's not really important. But truth is outside of us, and truth begins with and from God. And so, what are we doing about that? Realizing that this organic church, not simply a book of laws, but a living, breathing organism. That's what our church is, and that's what God wants us to do that. And so to do that, God has to do some pruning. Now, anybody that does any kind of gardening, you realize that you have to cut things. You have to get rid of some things. If you just plant stuff, it's going to turn into a jungle. And jungles are not very nice. Jungles are dangerous places. So we have to be in that way of God, of listening to Him. And think about the many times that we decide, we have this wonderful ability to speak. We're the only creatures that can actually speak in words and sentences and things like that. Some animals have a way of making sounds to warn of danger or something, but there's no syntax. No, there's never, ever, ever, other than human beings, that actually wrote a poem. No animal's ever written a poem. Not even a song. Oh no, the whales have songs. Those are sounds they make, but they don't have construction of language. So we have to kind of think about, how do I use my speech? How many times have we gotten into our friends were talking about something, and invariably we start talking about Joe or Mary, or did you see what he did? Yeah, and we start doing this, and we start talking about other people. We have to be pruned of that. God wants us to prune that out of us, cut it out of us. Not easy, because we have habits and we go that way. And it's we just talk. Well, we just talk about other people in just a terrible way. Now I know. Let me ask the question: how many of you would like to have people talk behind your back? Raise your hand. See, nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants people to talk about you behind your back. But how many times do we do that? How many times do we spread gossip? When we have this beautiful voice that we can sing and tell the truth, we don't even know if we're telling the truth. Well, I heard so-and-so, it's 17 people down the line. Remember that game we used to play as kids? You'd get in a circle, and you'd whisper something to this person, and you'd go around like this, and keep going around, and by the time, that you get around here, it's not even any near the truth that started. It happens like that. So God wants to prune us of that, to get rid of it. In fact, even there are some spiritual writers that talk about when you talk like that, you're actually breaking the commandment, do not steal. Because sometimes when you start that stuff, you take somebody's reputation. And nobody else knows it, but you think you know something. And how many times do we do that? So one of the things we can think about in this with this gospel is, what has to be pruned in me? What do I have to get rid of? And what am I willing to do that? So you have that whole kind of social stuff that we do, and we have to be so very, very careful with that. How many of us are holding on grudges from 10, 20, 30 years, and we're still angry, and it still gets under our craw? We have to prune away from us the holding of grudges. And if we have said something about somebody that's wrong, we owe them restitution. It's stealing their good name. And, do we even think about that? Do we even think about, gosh, maybe I have to do some apologizing around here sometimes. And sometimes we get into this spiritual sloth. We're just really lazy about our faith. We should be the people who are at church every Sunday. That's what we should do. I go a couple times a month. That's enough. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Because the vine grower said, and his son said, every Sunday. So are we ready to be pruned of our spiritual laziness? Sometimes people have sloth as just generally as lazy. No, sloth is a sin that it says I'm lazy in spiritual things. So it's a little more narrow. How many people are engaged in pornography? That is just a horrible, horrible sin. And, our children are getting affected with it. Because, it's all over the place. That's one of the reasons we have our program here to have smart families and not have any cell phones, at least until 8th grade is over, and no social media until you're at least 16 or 17. Brains are still growing and learning. And the damage it does, it's a terrible thing. We have to, prune ourselves of that with the help of God. Avarice, being way too enamored with the things of this world. And there are beautiful things in this world. But how often do we allow that beautiful world to own us? And forgetting that everything is God's. Everything is God's. But we got to have the nicest car, the newest phone, and on like this. We need to be pruned of that avarice, that excessive wanting to have things of this world. And we could go on and on. But we are called to be organically tied to Jesus and his Father, our Father. So perhaps you can do some soul searching. And one of the things that happens on a retreat is you have lots of time to think about things. And in fact, one of the things I heard this morning already, it was so nice not to be wearing your watches or your phones. And that's kind of nice. But how often do we just cling to those things and I'm going to die if I don't have my phone? Because I know if I have my phone, when Pope Francis calls me, I'll be able to answer. But we do that. So what are we willing to do to be pruned? We know what we need to do. We know. And with the help of God, we can do those things. And if you go through a little litany and, gosh, Monsignor, there are 6 things I talked about, and I have all 6 of them. Just to work on one at a time. One at a time. Don't try to change everything. It's too much. But one thing at a time. That's what happens. So let us, in this beautiful gospel, we, have a vine grower who sent his only son, the branch. And he says, now the vine. And we become the branches and produce much fruit. That is what God wants. Let us dare. Let us dare to do exactly what God asks us to do.